is WTAE-TV Pittsburgh. Right now, Channel 4 Action News is taking action for you.
Good afternoon. This noon, the latest on yesterday's tragic shootings as the picture of the deadly incident comes into focus. And we'll have the details on the suspect and word from some who knew him. And yet another shooting overnight, this one in West Mifflin. More on that in just a moment.
And your Saturday forecast looking pretty nice. Partly cloudy, breezy, and warmer this afternoon with a high temperature around 70 degrees. Good afternoon, everyone. Good Saturday afternoon, Ellen.
And good Saturday afternoon to you, Jerry, as well. And thanks to all of you for tuning in to Channel 4 Action News this noon. I'm Ellen Gamble. Well, 6 communities are picking up the pieces today after yesterday's devastating shooting spree. This latest tragedy comes just 2 months after the terror in Wilkinsburg. And again, many Pittsburghers find themselves asking why. Well, that's just one of the many questions today. Questions about what made the gunman go on this shooting spree, leaving 5 people dead in his wake. Now, this is the man whom police say is responsible. He is 34-year-old Richard Baumhammers. Well, first, though, a recap of yesterday's tragic events. Police say it all started in Mount Lebanon at 1:45 yesterday afternoon with a small fire at a house on Elm Spring Road. When firefighters arrived, they found a woman shot dead inside. And from that house, the suspect then headed a few miles away to Scott Township. And that's where he's believed to have spray-painted swastikas on the Beth El Synagogue on Cochran Road. He then opened fire. No one was injured, but then the gunman got on Green Tree Road and headed to Carnegie. That is where he opened fire at the India Grocers in Scott Town Center. One man there was killed, another one injured. The suspect then continued on Green Tree to Forsyth and shot at the Ahavath Achim Synagogue in Carnegie. The synagogue was vacant. He headed to Robinson Town Center next and opened fire inside the Yaffe restaurant, killing 2 people there. Police believed he then jumped on the Parkway and then headed to Center Township, Beaver County, where he shot a male student at the C.S. Kim Karate Center, killing him. Police finally arrested the suspect, 34-year-old Richard Baumhammers, at 3:15 yesterday afternoon on the Ambridge-Aliquippa Bridge. And as we said, 5 people are dead. 63-year-old Anita Gordon of Mount Lebanon, 30-year-old Tao Pam, who worked at the Yaffe restaurant, 34-year-old Ji Ye-soon, manager at that restaurant, 31-year-old Anil Thakur from India, shot at the India grocery store, and 22-year-old Gary Lee of Aliquippa shot at the karate studio. Sandeep Patel remains in critical condition from a gunshot wound suffered during that shooting spree. And the suspect in this shooting, 34-year-old Richard Baumhammers, was arraigned last night, but only on the charges stemming from the attack in Beaver County. The counts, homicide and recklessly endangering others. Our Shannon Perrine was there.
What do you have to say to the victims and their families? Stone-faced, Richard Baumhammers has nothing to say to anyone. Eyes distant, almost a smirk on his face, he strolls into his formal arraignment. Outside, people gather to see the alleged killer. They came for different reasons.
See, I want to see it closer for myself. That's what I wanted to see. I was kind of shocked because when I see it, it kind of scared me. It kind of made me numb.
Like he had no remorse. Like it wasn't no big thing about it.
As police prepare to take him to jail, Baumhammers waits inside. An officer asks him casually if he ever played football. In high school, he said, with a smile on his face. Offensive end. As he heads to jail, angry shouts from angry bystanders, but no reaction from Richard Baumhammers.
And that was Shannon Perrine reporting. Now, there's no word yet on when Baumhammers is expected to be arraigned on the charges related to the shootings that happened in Allegheny County. Well, just who is this man accused of these horrific acts of violence? Our investigative reporter Paul Van Osdal looked into Richard Baumhammers' history. He comes from a prominent family. His father is a well-regarded dentist who practices in Oakland and the South Hills. Richard Baumhammers is a 1984 graduate of Mount Lebanon High School, and people who know him tell us he was a loner there. He graduated from Kent State University and then went to law school in Birmingham, Alabama, moving on to Sacramento before settling in Atlanta to practice law. Now, the Georgia Bar's website says he was an active member as recently as last month. We also found Baumhammers on a website for Latvian lawyers practicing outside that small Eastern European country. He describes his expertise as immigration and international law, but it appears he was not active in the local immigration bar. We talked to several immigration lawyers here here in Pittsburgh who say they've never heard of Baumhammers. Baumhammers has an email account with America Online, and we found some interesting information on his self-written profile. He says he lives in Pittsburgh and Latvia. He describes his hobby as international travel, and his favorite quote is, "This too shall pass." Now, Paul also reached Richard Baumhammer's sister. She is a doctor in Maryland. She said she didn't want to talk about her brother. Well, last night we spoke about the day's events with a criminology professor from Carnegie Mellon University, and he says it's too soon to tell just what motivated the suspect. And we don't have that soundbite for you, but when asked about whether or not this kind of violence was becoming a trend, the professor says at this point there's just not enough information to make a judgment call on that. And yesterday was supposed to be a day of peace for those of the Jewish faith, but for members of the Bethel Synagogue in Scott Township, that peace instead turned to violence. They knew from news reports about the swastika painted on their building, and they also knew the glass had been shot out of the front doors. But as the members gathered at the synagogue yesterday, it's what they found out later that was so much more devastating. One of their members, Anita Gordon, was the first victim in the shooting rampage. Many called her Nikki. They say she was in her 60s and a very active member of Bethel. Our Michelle Wright went to the emotional service last night as the Jewish community there tried to pull together.
The swastika on the outside of the synagogue and all of the shattered glass was just heartbreaking for Bethel members. But actually, it was the news they heard once they were inside that was much, much worse. An active member, Nikki Gordon, was one of the victims.
Glass and walls can be cleaned. This is not repairable.
Some of Gordon's friends watching news coverage put the pieces together.
She was a very good friend of mine. And of course on the news it didn't say what her name was, but we saw the aerial view of the house and I knew it was her. And she was one of the most beautiful people.
Members tried to deal with the shocking news. A young mother whose son goes to preschool here.
We don't come every Friday night. And this made us want to come. It made us want to be more observant. It made us think about who we are and why we do what we do, and it made us want to come tonight, and maybe we're going to come more frequently now.
A father whose son works here.
It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. You never know when you send someone off to work whether they'll come home. You don't think about it, but it's pretty frightening.
And synagogue leaders say the message here is now unity.
You go forward, and as you look around, what you're going to see is the Jewish community coming together, as it does in times such as these. And we will have services this evening. We will have services tomorrow. We will go forward.
Disaster restoration crews were able to replace the glass doors. They also managed to erase the swastika that was painted on the side of the building, but it will take a long, long time for the emotional scars to be erased. Michelle Wright, Channel 4 Action News.
And it wasn't just members from Bethel Synagogue coming together last night. Nearby Temple Emmanuel members joined them for their services, and even several non-Jewish community members joined the service as a show of support. Well, a random act of brutality like this shakes a community to its core, and today help is out there for anyone who needs it. Take a look at the screen, maybe write some of these numbers down. The Centers for the Victims of Violent Crime can be reached at area code 412-392-8582. They operate a 24-hour-a-day hotline there. South Hills Interfaith Ministries at 854-9120. And Allegheny Crisis Emergency Services, again, another 24-hour-a-day hotline for you there, 1-888-424-2287. And we'll have more on yesterday's tragic shootings from throughout the area. Up next, we'll take a look at how everything unfolded in the early stages of the shootings. And yet another shooting in our area, this one earlier this morning. Those details just ahead. In news this noon, I'm Ellen Gamble. 6 communities, 2 counties, 5 lives taken, all in just a few short hours yesterday. And this noon, the man accused in the shooting spree is behind bars. He is 34-year-old Richard Baumhammers. We continue our coverage of yesterday's deadly shooting spree. It all began in Mount Lebanon with a small fire at a house on Elm Spring Road. And when firefighters arrived, they found a woman shot dead inside. The community's reaction? Shock. Our John Greiner spoke with those in that neighborhood who knew the Baumhammers.
Rushing to answer a smoke alarm at a home on Elm Spring Road, firefighters found a woman shot dead inside.
Initially thought it was a fire victim. When some clues pointed to the fact that it wasn't, then we backed out and turned the house over to the police.
As relatives and friends learned of the death of Anita Gordon, everyone asked the same question. Why? Perhaps only because she was Jewish.
She's a very nice lady, and I don't understand what happened. I don't know who did it. If they did it, I honestly hope that they get their just deserves, because it's not fair.
Police charged her former neighbor with Miss Gordon's death, 34-year-old Richard Baumhammers, seen here in his Mount Lebanon high school yearbook photo. The home actually belongs to Baumhammers' father, a prominent dentist here in Mount Lebanon, but he spent a lot of time there, and among the things he did there, apparently, was to chat online with some others in the neighborhood. He chatted with Sheila Grenadier's 15 and 21-year-old daughters, but gave no clue of his apparent anger.
He was always pleasant and never said anything that derogatory about anybody, was always, extremely nice.
Baumhammers talked online about wanting to meet 21-year-old Shannon Grenadier, who's glad that never happened.
It scares me. I mean, especially, I'm Jewish, and it just, I never thought this would ever happen here. And it just, I don't know, it scares me.
John Greiner, Channel 4 Action News.
In other news this noon, a man is dead after a shooting in West Mifflin. This shooting happened around 4:30 this morning at the West Mifflin Estates housing complex. And police tell us the unidentified man appeared to have been shot several times. Police do have a suspect in custody this noon.